As you can see, you don't sit still in a 12. So for the last couple of weeks, you've watched us sail something a bit smaller than Seahorse in Pepsi and National 12 dinghy. Well, this week, things get smaller still. We go radio-controlled boat racing with the Medway Yacht Club RC Laser group. They race out at Barton Point at Sheerness during the winter months when everyone's laid up, and it's really good fun. It's a way of going sailing without getting wet, although with the British weather as it is, you can't guarantee that.
And Ian's racing his radio model laser, which takes up most of my lounge. So it's freezing, it's windy, but we're on dry land. I've set up cameras. We already had one person try and walk off with one of my cameras. It's Sheppy. Oh, that's a beep. That must mean it's starting.
6-3.
So the radio control model laser is a scaled down version of the real laser dinghy, the most popular dinghy in the world. They're about 1 metre long, and with a big rig on, they stand nearly 2 metres tall, so they're not toys. And although they're very basic, the one big thing they have going for them is the same thing that the standard laser dinghy has going for it. They're all exactly the same. The rules prohibit you from making any changes, even to the extent that you're not allowed to paint the hull, which is why, when you're watching this film, you'll find it very hard to tell one boat from another. But it means they all perform the same. It comes down to the little things you do as a helm to tweak the sail and how you actually go about sailing it. So the racing's always close. So the racing you're watching here was what we got up to on New Year's Eve. Those of you in the UK will remember that the weather was pretty miserable over Christmas. We had one storm after another, and today was no exception. Fortunately, boats come with 4 different rigs, from a big one for those light wind days, and then varying in size right down to the smallest one, the one you see here, for the strong days. We tend to run the same format of racing most weekends, beginning with a line start that's followed a 1-minute countdown. From here we have a beat to a windward mark with a port rounding. That takes us onto a reaching leg to a wing mark where we jibe, to go back downwind to a leeward mark where we'll round up and do the beat again. And then once at the top mark, which we again round to port, we just have a straight run down to the leeward mark and then back up to the line. So it's a triangle and a sausage in racing terms. Often we set a longer course than you see here today, but because of the conditions, Jamie, who does a fantastic job of organising the racing for the Medway RC Lasers, decided to set the course in this small bay. It kept us all in relative shelter and meant if anyone got into trouble, they wouldn't get blown away too far. I should point out that there's somewhere to go racing radio control sailing boats. Barton Point really is about as good as it gets. It's facing in the right direction, so we have basically a non-shore wind most of the time. It's got hard standing all around this leeward shore so that launching's easy. The hard standing itself is built around the tea room, so that when you want to have a break, there's a hot cup of tea and a bacon butty can be waiting for you. The water's not too deep, so it's easy to lay marks. There really is not much to complain about. I've been rambling away here about the boats and have completely forgotten to mention the racing. 51, that you just see go round the windward mark for the last time, was Jamie, the guy I told you about who organises the racing and invariably does a lot of the winning. The next boat round, which didn't appear to have any sail numbers on it, was Tony, who wins most of the time when Jamie doesn't. I'm sailing 62, the one with the orange stripes on the sail. My eyesight's not as good as it should be, so I struggle to read the numbers, so I needed something to help me pick my boat out. I had a good ding-dong race most of the time this weekend with Pete in 63 and Tony in number 4, but you'll have to pick them out as you see them go past. So anyway, This is race 11 that we're coming to the end of. We did 15 races this morning, and gives you an idea of what racing a radio control model boat's all about if you join the Medway Yacht Club RC Laser group. So for those of you that watch our channel and just like to keep up with what we're doing, I'll play the music in a minute and you've got an excuse to go. But for the few of you that might be interested in the racing, Hannah stayed around for a few more races today, so I'll show those in a minute after we've done the credits. So hang around, and if we're lucky, you might see me win a race.
Bang, 5-1. 7-5. 6-2.
And that's as exciting as it gets.
I actually found that quite exciting.
It is, it's good racing. Yeah. It's proper racing.
6-3.
Sincerely don't know how many Sundays I will stand here like this with my wellies on, standing in poo.
So this was the start of race 9. Normally at the start the battle had been who could get on port at the pin quickest, and in this particular race Tony, sailing 04, managed to do that. I tried an alternative strategy this time, to be at the committee boat end, so to speak, of the line on port. Although I'd be sailing a longer distance, I was hoping that being clear of the headland that was ahead I'd get fresher wind and maybe make up some of the boat speed. As it was to turn out, this didn't really happen. The thing with sailing RC lasers is there's 3 things that you've really got to master. The first is you've got to make good starts. They don't have to be the best start, but they do have to be a good start. If you make a bad start, the fleet's all so close on speed that you'll really struggle to make up the ground. So that brings me to point 2. You mustn't make mistakes. If you foul someone and have to do a turn, you'll really struggle to get that place back. Even if you take a flyer and go right out on one side of the course and it's the wrong thing to do, again, you'll really struggle to get that time back. So you mustn't make mistakes. And then the third thing is you need boat speed. And to be honest, it needs to be more than just competitively quick. In this race, Tony in 04 and myself in 6.2 have perfectly quick boats. But Jamie's boat, 51, was consistently a tiny bit quicker. It's such a small amount, you'll struggle to watch it in these films. But when you put his boat against one of ours on any kind of beat, his will always sneak a couple of boat lengths up. By the same measure, Tony in 75, the boat that appears to have no numbers, he's got the same speed as Tony 04 and myself, but he can sail a little bit higher. So again, such a smaller difference that you'll never see it just watching this film, but on any given beat, Tony will gain a couple of boat lengths to windward. So between Tony 75 and Jamie 51, they always had the advantage. And that's the last thing that you've got to try and find. A little tweak in your boat setup that gives you an advantage. So back to the race, and you'll notice that Jamie, 51, and Tony, 75, have got in front, like they always do, even though Tony 04 made the best start. And to add evidence to my point about not making mistakes, you'll notice that I misjudged the ley line going into that first windward mark, and Pete, in 63, managed to get up inside me. And now, because the boats are all so competitive and basically the same speed, I'm going to struggle to get this ground back. So you notice, Tony 75 managed to get round that windward mark in front of Jamie in 51, making good use of the height he could gain. And to be honest, probably the same wind shift that I managed to get, as I managed to sneak back in front of Pete in 63. It does go to show that given the 3 points I've just said, sailing still comes into it, and you do have to get on the right side of the shifts. But then, as you've seen, I completely misjudged the distance to the mark and undershot it, nearly taking Pete in 63 with me. He managed to tack just in time to get round it, but I had to jibe round, effectively doing a turn to get back to the mark, and that's ground I'll never make back up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he's fifth.
faster with mine, it's just so loud.
So in the end, Tony, 75, won. Jamie, 51, close behind, in second. Pete, 63, got third, beating me, 62, into fourth. And I don't know what happened to Tony, number 4, because he was third for a long while, but he wound up 5th. So this then is the start of race 10. It's a normal squabble to try and be the boat closest to the pin end of the line on port. It's not always like this, but in this wind direction, with the course we had and the gusts as they were, that's what really worked best. So this time, I decided to hang around at the pin end of the buoy, hoping there'd be a hole so I can harden up and take that prime position. As it happened, pretty much everyone else decided to start on starboard, coming down the line to close out people like me and Tony 04, and then waiting themselves for an opportunity to tack onto port. My plan almost worked. If I'd been a bit braver, I could have hardened up and squeezed in front, I think. But as it was, I decided to take the safe option and bail out, bear away, go behind the fleet, and then harden up onto port. As it turned out, it wasn't a brilliant start, but it wasn't actually that bad either. So this first beat had the usual suspects at the front. Jamie, 51, after a good start, making use of his speed to get out into the lead. Tony, 75, making use of his height to come up underneath Tony and apply some pressure as they come to the first mark. Me, making use of my average but okay start to capitalise on the clear air I had and sail as free as I could. I was some distance back from them, but still in contention. The race then settled into 2 battles, one for the lead between Jamie 51 and Tony 75, and then for the last place on the podium, so to speak, Pete 63 was just inside of me to 62, with Tony 04 not that far behind. So when we get to this leeward mark for the first time, Tony 75's just snuck in front of Jamie in 51, and I in 62 have just stuck in front of Pete in 63. So there's plenty of racing going on. So this next beat proved to be quite interesting. We came round the leeward mark on a bit of a lift. Halfway up the beat, Jamie in 51 decided he wasn't going to pass Tony just following him, so he tacked off. Tony 75 didn't have much of an option, but had to tack and cover him. They then went off to the left to carry on the beat, with Pete 63 and myself carrying on up on port as we were before on this nice lift. So by the time we get to the windward mark for the last time, we've all come back together in a big group. So this mark proved to be one of those right place, wrong time for Jamie in 51. Tony, 75, realising at the last minute he was a bit close to the mark, stuffed up to make sure he could get round it, but this slowed him up. Jamie, 51, having Pete 63 and myself in close company, didn't have that many options and sailed into the back of him, causing a penalty. Then, in his efforts to try and avoid what's going on, he hits Pete 63 as well. Then the requirement then to do turns effectively rules him out of this race. And the effect it had on Pete in 63 leaves me and Tony 75 clear out in front. So once round this leeward mark for the last time, it's just a beat to the line. And although there's less than a boat length between the first three boats, although Pete 63 I believe should have done a turn really because he was windward boat in the collision with Jamie 51, the boats are so evenly matched it's almost impossible to get past someone. So the finishing order remained the same.
7-5, 6-2, 6-3.
Oh, there's only 2 laps. That makes more sense.
So this then is the start of race 12. And again, it's the normal fight to see who can be down at the pin end on port. This time, no one's brave enough to try and duck inside it because the fleet's getting too good at coming down on starboard and covering the hull. So I join the fleet and line up just below Tony 75 in an attempt to shoot up and win that point. And it all gets a little bit argy-bargy. I end up being a bit naughty and rolling around the inside of the mark, because although you're allowed to hit marks in RC boat racing, you're not meant to hit the line. But as soon as I got crowded down and Tony 75 didn't give me space to windward, I didn't feel too guilty about doing it. Jamie, unfortunately, in 51 was a little bit too eager and was over the line. In an attempt to try and get back quickly to minimise his losses, he ends up infringing another boat. So, as is often the way in lasers, small mistakes end up getting punished much greater than you deserve. So at the start of this race, as I was now effectively second row, having had to slow up to clear the start buoy, I decided to stand on the starboard tack for longer than normal. As it turned out, everyone on port was sailing a big header, and if the wind would come back to its normal position, I'd be looking good. So all the bumping and bashing at the beginning has split the fleet into 2 groups. At the front, there's Tony 75 leading the way, as he does, with Pete 63 close behind, and me 62 just behind Pete. Then there's a big gap until we get to the rest of the fleet. So at this leeward mark for the first time, Tony 75 defends quite hard from Pete 63 just to make sure Pete can't get the inside overlap on him, but he still rounds in front nicely. It however allows me to slightly close in on Pete, so as we go round the mark, Pete defends quite hard as we come out to stop me shooting up the inside of him. The net result of all this is that we all slow up a bit, but we all come out of it cleanly and the race is still on. So at the start of this second beat, Tony 75 puts in a short tack on starboard just to make sure he's to windward of myself and Pete 63 and has control. I've managed to get inside Pete, so I've got clear air and this side of the beat is looking good. Meanwhile, Jamie 51 and Tony 04 have broken away from the rest of the group and are having their own private battle for 4th. So meanwhile, back at the front of the fleet, we've all got our own ideas on how to get to this windward mark first. Pete 63 decides to tack early, moving back into the middle of the course, looking for a lift that might get him inside us. I go to what I think is the ley line, not wanting to go any further than I have to, and tack. Tony 75, not wanting to trust my judgment on where the ley line is, and rightly so, decides to stand on a short while longer before tacking. Time will tell who got this right. So there we go. Who'd have thought it'd have been me? Pete 63 did a great job going back into the middle and gained loads of space and is just behind me, with Tony 75 being the big loser.
Back out on the video, in my opinion, with the video camera, because that's where the next step is from. So stick it down to this little mark here and do a jibe, and then just cast the finish line.
So there we go. I got round this final leeward mark in front, with Pete just behind me. He again decides to tack early. Doesn't really have many options, because as we've already discussed, you don't pass people on just outright speed, or very rarely, so he's got to try something if he wants to get in front. But fortunately for me, it doesn't actually work.
6-2.
Got that on film. 6 feet still hasn't got it.
I've been doing a lot better since you got here.
6-3-7-5.
And that's it. If you stuck with us this long, thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time, we'll try and do the same again with some sunshine, so we can get some better pictures, and you'll get a better feel for what it's all about.